Welcome back to the Secret Stash podcast. I'm your host, Chuck Charlton, with the Charlton Advantage team. I have my partner, Annette, and we're here to talk about first-time buyers and some of the things they should know, and in some cases, some of the things they don't know, and that can be a scary thing too. So the information that we're going to talk about today is you may be able to find it elsewhere. I find from my experience it's very general, or it's kind of in different pots. So we've really compiled some of the information. You can find more information even above and beyond what we're going to talk about today at the Milton Buyer class.
Yeah.
But if you don't feel like coming to the class, we're going to break down the most important things that you're going to need to know.
That's right. Thanks for having me, Chuck. And this topic is one of my most favorite topics because I get really excited when I get to meet with first-time home buyers, because it is such an exciting time. It can be fearful, but it doesn't have to be, because knowledge is power. So that's what we're here to kind of provide to you, is give you a little bit of knowledge and insight to take that first step. And what we do is, when we meet with clients, is we sit down and we ask them, how can I make this a really great meeting for you? And what information do you need? Sometimes they have the answer to that, and sometimes they don't.
Right.
So I've compiled over the years a list, and I've heard all the questions, and I've compiled a list of the top 3 questions that we get from first-time home buyers.
Okay.
Along with the answers to those questions.
Of course, the answers. Yeah.
And how to make the home buying journey stress-free and fun.
Okay, good. So the very first question is what?
Question 1 is, how much is it going to cost me?
We never hear that,
Surprise, surprise.
Right.
So there's 3 parts to this answer, and really it's upfront costs, it's closing costs, and it's ongoing costs.
Okay, perfect. Yeah.
So your upfront costs are going to be your deposit and your home inspection. Your deposit is going to be part of your down payment, okay? So that you've saved up for your down payment, you have a bit of the deposit. It's usually between $5,000 to $25,000.
Sure.
And that only gets exchanged or needed once you have an accepted offer.
Okay.
So that money is provided within 24 hours of an accepted offer.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you want to make sure that you have access to this money readily once you start writing offers.
Right.
Okay?
And so your down payment would be a part of your total, or sorry, your deposit is part of your total
Correct.
down payment.
Correct.
And they both start with D, so they're confusing.
That's right.
So your total down payment, obviously it can vary. You want to speak to a mortgage professional. The minimum that you'd be looking at is a 5% down, right? There's a benefit of going to 20%.
Sure.
Some people think you need 20%. You may not need that much.
That's right.
New to Canada may even need more than 20%. In the absence of having things like a job and credit, but there may still be options for those people.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely, there would be options. And then you have your home inspection. And your typical home inspection would cost around $500, give or take.
Okay.
There may be circumstances where you might need additional inspections, like if there's a pool, or if there's a well, or septic, or there's a wood-burning fireplace.
Right.
Those
so
would be a little
specific
extra.
consultants around things related to the house.
Absolutely. Because you want to protect yourself, and you want to make sure that the biggest investment of your life is sound.
Right. And
Right.
and one of the things about a condo, because it's very common for a first-time buyer to buy a condo
Yes.
property, they would have they would usually request, sometimes the seller pays, sometimes the buyer does, but there's a document that contains the rules, the regulations.
Yes.
So if you have pets, does the condo allow for that? And it also gives a very detailed budget of how much, people say, oh, I don't want to pay maintenance fees, but they actually, in many cases, do go towards beneficial things for that buyer.
Absolutely.
So you have an option to look at those documents prior to what we call firming up the deal, which is looking at things like home inspection, status certificate, the condo documents.
But not just you, your lawyer needs to look at
Correct.
it. Because
Yes,
it's
of
not
course.
really information that you're going to want to look at. There can be hundreds of pages in this status.
Sure. Even the
So,
best real estate agents
absolutely.
often are not experts at reading
Yeah,
that.
definitely
Yeah.
not experts at reading that. So that kind of brings us to your closing costs.
Okay.
Right?
So there's the two, home inspection and your deposit.
That is upfront when you're writing the
upfront
offer.
around the offer.
Yes.
Okay, so now we fast forward to 30, 60, 90 days after
Yep.
That's negotiated with the seller when you're actually going to complete the sale
Yes.
and receive the keys, and it becomes yours. So this is where we're talking about closing costs. So a day or two before that, you're going to meet with the lawyer, and you're going to bring in a check that's going to have what?
Okay. So you're going to have the remainder of your down payment, okay? And this is the down payment you've saved minus your deposit.
Okay,
You've already given that.
Okay.
And then you're going to have to budget for around 1.5% of the purchase price for things like the lawyer fees, for land transfer taxes.
Of which there's a rebate for first-time buyers.
Absolutely, which we talk about in the buyer class.
Sure.
So we've got some really good tips there.
And there are calculators online if you were to look at Ontario land transfer tax, because it is a provincial land transfer tax.
Yeah.
If you're buying in Toronto, there's a second land transfer tax specific to the 416 municipality.
There's a really great app that I use and I share with my clients called the Canadian Mortgage app, and that will give you all the information.
It's excellent.
Fantastic. It's free.
Yeah.
So it's not part of your costs.
Yes.
Yeah. So then you're going to look at, PST on mortgage insurance. So that's if you're giving less than 20%, you'd have to pay the
The
taxes
mortgage is
on.
insured,
That's
right?
correct.
At less than 20%. Yeah.
Then there's small adjustments for property taxes that were already paid by the seller or that are owing by you.
Or condo fees that are paid. If you close in the middle of the month, they may have paid some of that
That's
already.
correct, depending on your closing date. And then any appraisals that your lender may need. And that can run you sometimes around $300. So you want to budget 1.5% of the purchase price. So if it's a $500,000 home, $7,500 you want to estimate to have on hand on top of your deposit.
So a typical first-time buyer might have 5% down, which on a $500,000 home is $25,000. Maybe $10,000 of which is the deposit. 15 extras given on closing.
Yeah.
So there is a bit of time to save that if you're close.
There is. There's tax time, tax refund time. Right. There's a lot of options.
Right. And then you've got your closing costs. So it's the $25,000 plus $7,500 would be, I don't want to say typical, but it would be a common example of what a first-time buyer would invest in.
And that's due on closing day. See? Okay. And then you have your ongoing costs, which is the cost that to live in the home, to just keep the home up and running, to keep it.
And some of those are the same, some are different than rent.
Exactly. So your mortgage payment is going to be around $2,000 to $2,500. Okay. Then you have your utilities, which are going to be $100 to $300 a month. Okay. Insurance can cost.
That's heat, hydro.
Absolutely. Just to kind of keep the house afloat.
Yeah.
And then your insurance is going to be $30 to $80. Okay.
Different than tenant insurance.
Yes, it is.
You're insuring the building.
You're insuring the building. It's your asset. It's yours, right? So
and the mortgage company will require that as well.
Yes,
right?
definitely.
Because they're a part owner in that property.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure. And then we always like to say you want to kind of budget, 1% of the cost of the house, every year to ongoing maintenance.
Right.
Okay. So some years it may be very little. You won't have to do anything. But some years it might be a little bit more. Like, what if you need to replace the air conditioner, or there's a window, or a few windows that you need replacing, or the roof, right? So you just want to kind of budget for maintenance. Or what if you want to upgrade your kitchen? Right?
Sure. Yeah.
It's not just the mechanical.
There's wear and tear on things like carpets and appliances.
Exactly.
And you don't want to put that stuff on a credit card. I read a study that 15% of first-time buyers go into debt for unforeseen expenses after closing. So that, like, your furnace breaks down a month after you buy. It's unfortunate, but it does happen.
It does.
And another 15% of buyers go into debt for furniture. And so the big lesson there, from my perspective, is don't put all of your money into the down payment and the closing costs. Is make sure you have some extra money set aside too.
Yeah.
And the other thing I wanted to clarify, you said $2,000 to $2,500. So a rough rule of thumb, for every $100,000, how much would that cost?
We like to conservatively say that it's about $500 for every $100,000 that you mortgage. Okay? Give or take. And you need to speak to a qualified mortgage professional to get that answer for you.
Sure.
But for those of you at home that are watching this or listening to this, that's what you want to kind of budget for.
Yeah, and you can get an updated version of that simply by going to the Canadian Mortgage app and putting $100,000 in and seeing what the payment is.
Yes.
What that's going to depend mostly on is how long the payments are stretched, which we call amortization. The most common being 25 years, but there are options to extend that if you're more than 20% down. As of now, the mortgage rules change all the time.
So as of the time of this recording.
Right, which is spring 2018.
Right.
And then the interest rate is the other thing, obviously, that's going to vary the payments.
That's right. That's right. And that kind of brings us to the question 2 is, well, how can I afford it?
How can I afford it?
Yeah, big one, right?
Subtle difference between question 1.
Yeah, it's the action question. It's what am I going to do next? What's the step? So you really want to speak to a mortgage professional, okay? This is a really critical step because they're going to help you understand how much you can get pre-approved for. So you have 2 options when you do that, and you can go into the bank or you can go to a mortgage broker. Okay? So when you walk into a bank, they can offer you lending solutions and lending products specific to them. So RBC, you get an RBC mortgage. TD, you'll get a TD mortgage.
Right.
With a mortgage broker, they have up to 30 plus different lenders that they can access and hundreds of different lending solutions.
Right. Trust companies, credit unions, private money in some cases.
There's some very creative and unique lending solutions out there. Okay. But whatever avenue you decide to go with, you need to make sure that the mortgage professional is asking for documentation up front. Things like job letter, previous tax returns, and any other financial information. Without that information, they cannot make an educated decision about how much home you are going to be able to afford.
Right. And they can't really give you a true pre-approval because a good pre-approval is in writing. It's one thing to ask somebody on the phone, say, how much money do you make? Okay, well, this is how much mortgage you can have. But that doesn't look at everything. It doesn't look at, typically the 4 elements that they're looking at when they give you a pre-approval is your down payment, which is really like, the kitty, it's the total amount.
It's the percentage of the total cost.
That's right.
Value of the home.
Your income, right, which is the ongoing. How does that compare? Even the third thing is debt servicing. How does your income compare to how much you're going to spend on the home, and also things like car payments, student loans, visa payment, that kind of thing. And then the fourth one is credit score, which is how well you repay debt, right? So those 4 elements work together, and it spits out a number based on things like the bank doesn't want you to spend 80% of your money on your mortgage because it's irresponsible. You have things like income tax, you've got child support, and even in some cases your max budget may not be the same as the max pre-approval. Yeah. Right? Because you might have different life expenses that the bank is not looking at too.
And that's something that you really need to speak to a mortgage professional about. Getting pre-approved is going to save you a lot of time because you know the price range that you need to look into.
Right.
It's going to save you heartache because I've seen it happen where, somebody maybe hasn't gone through the proper steps of a pre-approval.
Or they thought they had one.
Right. And, the house that they really wanted and that they imagined starting their family with and told friends and family about, they couldn't have. And it's really heartbreaking.
Sure.
And it can be avoided. So also negotiating power. So when comes to, the time of your offer, you're crystal clear on the parameters of what you can afford. So it's a really critical step.
So you can submit an offer and say, look, I've done everything I can up front. The bank is going to look not only at the things we talked about, those 4 elements, but also the value of the property too. But you can walk in and say, I've gone through my pre-approval, I've got it set. There should be no issues there. So provided that the home actually appraises and it's worth what we're actually making an offer on, financing is good.
We're good.
Right.
Yeah.
And to say that with confidence, even us as agents, when we go in to negotiate on behalf of our buyers, it's a good position to be in.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Everybody is confident.
Absolutely.
Right.
Good.
We've talked about how much it's going to cost you to own a home. Right. And we've also talked about how you can afford it. So you've gotten your pre-approval And now, question number 3 that we get is, how do I know I'm getting a good deal on a house? Right? So a few ways that you're going to absolutely know this. And the first way is by firsthand experience. So getting yourself offline and taking a look at the homes that are in your price range and really taking the time to understand that, the types, the styles, the different neighborhoods, because homes look very different in person, don't they?
Sure, they do. Absolutely. And some of the ones that give a really strong impression online, you go, man, the floors are all damaged and it smells bad and the paint looks awful and there's some that the agent might have taken pictures with their iPhone and it looks awful or there's no pictures.
Yeah.
But those can often be hidden gems too. But what we find is most we'll call them inexperienced buyers will just sort of pass those by, and you'll find that the really sharp buyers who have been in the field will recognize those for what they are, or they'll see the pictures differently because they have that firsthand experience. You can actually map a home out better once you've been in a few. The stuff on the computer looks totally different. Yeah,
you get to understand, layout. You can't tell layout by the 20 pictures that you see online, right?
Sure.
So, but you can kind of tell, when you go into a home, it's like, oh, I've been in this layout and this is what's different. So it's really an important step in the home buying journey is to get out and actually look at things.
I sometimes ask people how big the room is that they're sitting in. And so how big is a 12 by 10 room? Getting out there, seeing that, reading the listings will help you understand even things like that.
Yeah, for sure.
Right.
For sure.
So what you're saying is the buyer needs to have a level of firsthand experience.
Absolutely.
That's better than just relying on us, which is number 2, right? Which is research.
Yes. So where we step in is we give research, we're able to kind of pull what similar homes in the area have sold for. And it's great that you're out there and seeing what their listing prices are at, but you really want to know what they've sold for.
Sure.
Because that's market value, right? And that's how you get educated. You want to know how many days on the market the home has been. And importantly, you want to know what's happening in the neighborhood. So, if you're interested in a home that backs onto a field, wouldn't you want to know if there's a proposed condo development happening in your backyard?
Sure.
That would be important, right?
And a buyer could go to the town planning office and ask about that.
But are they?
And there's tools online too, but I mean, we live and breathe this stuff every day. So relying on us to say, here's what's happening around is a bit of a shortcut. It's a time saver.
Absolutely. Yeah. And it's I know I love that we take kind of a consultant's approach to that. So it's not that we have opinions on the next home that you need to buy. We present you with the information, and then it's your decision. It's your money. It's your investment. Right?
Sure. Yeah, and there's a tendency when people hear that is that, well, it's your final decision, that they think, well, I don't want all the power in this. We're able to give people guidance about things. How much more or less is a home worth because there's train tracks nearby.
That's right.
Hardwood floor versus carpet, or granite counters versus not.
Or a pile-shaped lot, right?
Right. We give useful, practical advice around that, but really at the end of the day, empowering you means that we're not making the decision for you, as we're helping to guide you, and that's what we're looking at doing. That partnership is really a key.
Very
so that's really, so you have your own firsthand experience combined with research.
That's right.
And there's a third element too.
Yeah, so the third element is how motivated are the buyer and the seller, right? So have you given your 60 days notice to your landlord? Is there an important event coming up in your life? Like, are you getting married or having a baby, right? This is all
where
going
there's extra pressure, maybe.
Exactly.
Hey, baby's coming, I need to move.
Right. And there's also, on the flip side, there's the motivation of the seller, right? So has the seller purchased another property and they have to move? Is it an estate sale? Is there financial distress happening with the seller, right?
And you may or may not know that as a buyer.
Yeah, you may or may not know that, but we may, right? We may know that information, and it's our duty, if you're a client of ours, to pass that information on to you.
Sure. Yeah, you want to have full awareness of facts, the same as your agent does.
For sure. And another aspect is understanding the market that we are currently in. So if it's an up market, you may have to pay a little bit more than the last sale.
Right.
right?
Yeah. So we call those sellers and buyers markets. And really, how those indicate is who's holding most of the cards. Really,
Yes.
is so in a seller's market, sellers have a little bit more power in the process. They have a little more leverage because there's just not that many homes out there.
Yeah.
Lots of buyers shopping.
That's
that kind
right.
of
It's
thing.
a
So no
supply
one
and demand
knows.
equation, really.
Yeah, and it's
Yeah.
not just one market. I mean, the problem with looking at the newspaper and television, those big sort of media institutions, is they don't break it down. But you and I both know that one bedroom condos could be doing something different than two bedroom
Yeah.
condos. Smaller detached could be a different strength and sort of demand properties versus like the double garage properties.
Yeah.
And so within any market, there might be 30 different slices there,
Little
all of which can be
submarkets,
doing
right?
different things. So if
Yep.
you're focused on one market, you do your education, you get out and see some places, you're very quickly going to learn what the dynamics are in that
Yeah.
specific little
Yeah.
niche or niche.
And that's important because it's not a blanket statement released by the CBC and you know what I mean,
Yeah.
all the reports that you see on housing and it's tanking, and find somebody that you trust in real estate and really ask the questions and let them guide you with the information,
Sure.
right?
Yeah. Good. So there
Yeah.
we go. That's the 3 things that we think first-time buyers should know.
Mm-hmm.
And in some cases, they just don't know. It's that what you don't know that you don't know that can really come back to hurt you. So
If you
final
want,
thoughts?
yeah, if you want to know more about this topic, we do a great buyer class, and you'll get a great book.
So in your hand, you're
In my
holding
hand.
the buyer class manual.
That's right. That's right. For those of us who don't have the video or listening, I have a buyer class book in my hand, and it's full of information on how you can take advantage of free government money, more about what lenders look for. We even have some cool slides about real life home inspections, right?
Sure,
And I mean,
what
Chuck,
to
you
look
teach
for
the
there.
class, so you tell me what.
Yeah, I mean, we go over anything from that free government money. We talk about how to get faster access to homes. So in some cases, you can even beat the real estate agents to some of the best new listings. Even things like, trivia is that if you double your mortgage payments, you're actually completely done with your mortgage in 6.5 years.
Yeah.
So just ways to not only get into the home, but also to avoid surprises. And to be on your way to building wealth. Because I always think about it, if a home is such a good investment, why do you just buy one, right? Can you put yourself on a track to buy more than
Absolutely.
one? And really, it's not so much that the wealth happens, quickly in like 6 months, although for some people it can. Usually it's luck, but it's that long-term plan. It's the long-term wealth building that
That's
I think
right.
real estate has the biggest advantage. So thank you, Annette, for joining us and talking about these very, very important topics, because it can be so daunting for somebody who's never done it before.
But it's such an exciting time. So if anybody wants to talk about the process, you know how to reach us, and we'd be happy to sit down with you and go over some of the costs and what it would look like to get into your next home.
Yeah, educated buyers. That's what we
right.
want.
Knowledge is power.
Absolutely. Secret Stash.